was 2010, 2011, and I had just taken basically the second worst trade of my entire trading career. It was the dollar Swiss franc trade, and I kept buying this as it was going down against every rule that I'd ever created, against every rule that I'd ever known. I broke all of the money management rules, and I remember sitting in my house. I lived in Mission Viejo, California at the time, and I was sitting in the house. I was looking out over the lake, feeling like this is going to be the end of my money management career. This is going to be the end of my trading career, and at that low point was probably the least amount of confidence I can remember ever having in my own trading abilities. And at those times, and I've had other times like that since, the most important thing for me to do was to get out of my own head. And all of my successful trading has been the result of getting out of my own head. So I got out of the house, I drove down to Olympiad Park, and it's a park in Mission Viejo, California, right along the road where they did the bicycle race in the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. And they built this giant set of soccer fields down below that road. And I remember I went down into that park and I just ran as fast as I could, as hard as I could, for as long as I could go. And I was just exhausting my mind, just releasing all of that toxic, negative energy, burning it out of my system. And I felt like, and not for the purpose of coming up with a brand new trade, not with any kind of purpose except for I got to get back to some point. And the only way I've ever known to do that is to exhaust my body and run it out of my system, sweat it out of my system. And I was there running, and I can still remember almost the exact point in the park that I was at. It's 2/3 of the way down the field, closer to the road, passing one of the goals on one of the soccer fields, and it just popped into my head. I'm going to take a $164,000 trade on the British pound Swiss franc. I don't know why it was the British pound Swiss franc. There was no reason that it should have been the British pound Swiss franc. I wanted my revenge on the Swiss franc for sure. And I went back home that day and I said, if I wait too long to start building this position, I'm going to lose my confidence. I'm going to fall back into my old pattern. And I took my first trade. So at the time I was trading a pretty big account. Everybody asks me how big the account was at the time, and I think it was probably $4 million or something along those lines. I mean, it was a pretty big account. I didn't use all of the capital in that account. I could have probably done the same trade with $100,000. And I took the first trade with one lot. And over the course of the next 2 weeks, every single time the pound Swiss ticked upwards and then fell back, I took another trade. I built into that position as long as all of the previous trades in that set of trades were profitable. And as long as they had all gone profitable, if it fell back a bit, but not far enough to take any of the previous trades negative, I added another trade until about, it was 20 days, 2 weeks, 20 days, something like that. It was a Thursday morning. Jordan was the governor of the Bank of Switzerland, or the chief whatever of the Bank of Switzerland. And I remember sitting up in bed super early in the morning. My window looked out over Lake Mission Viejo. And I remember sitting up in bed thinking, I have like 15 of these trades on. And if what he says in this interest rate decision goes against my position, all 15 of those are going to go negative. And I had this lump in my throat, and I almost closed those trades right before he made his announcement. And I don't even remember what the announcement was, but whatever he said, that trade popped into massive amounts of profit. It went from like a $70,000 trade into a $164,000 trade. And the second it got to $164,000, I just clicked the button and I closed all of those trades. At the time, I built my own replica of the trading platform that I used for the broker that I traded with, and I had a one-click to close all positions simultaneously, and they all closed down. I think it ended up being $164,000 $100. I mean, we can look it up and find I took a ton of screenshots at the time because it was like being on the cover of my own magazine at the time. I was so thrilled. And I've never since built a position that big. I've never since taken that many trades inside of that short of a period of time. But I don't know why that is. I could probably do that 2 or 3 times a year. I probably ought to think about doing it. Anyway, that's the story about the $164,000 trade.